I never thought my life would take me into the darkest corners of the galaxy's black market. The place was a cesspool of greed, where lives were traded like commodities and hope was a luxury no one could afford. But when I heard whispers about a captive alien, something rare enough to fetch a fortune, I knew I couldn't walk away. Her name was Avery. Not a name I'd heard before, but the stories painted her as more than just a prisoner. They said she was fierce, intelligent, and burdened by a past so twisted it would break most souls. I was Hunter, a man with a reputation for taking risks, but saving Avery wasn't just about danger or money. It was about redemption. The cage was smaller than I imagined, cramped with rusted bars and old chains that looked like they'd held her captive for centuries. When I first laid eyes on her, she was curled into herself, a silhouette against the dim light, but her eyes burned like twin suns, fierce and unyielding. That fire was the only sign she hadn't been broken. I approached slowly, aware that any wrong move could trigger a reaction. She studied me, silent, calculating, like a wild animal waiting for its chance to flee or fight. But I held no weapon, only the key to her shackles and a promise I intended to keep. "You're free?" I whispered, voice rough from nights spent chasing ghosts and regrets. The metal bit into my fingers as I worked the lock, but my hands didn't tremble. She watched, wary yet curious, as if testing my resolve. As the chains fell away, I caught a glimpse of her skin, a breathtaking mosaic of colors that shimmered under the flickering light, iridescent and alive. Her features were sharp and elegant, alien yet strangely familiar, as if she belonged somewhere between stars and Earth. Freedom tasted bitter in the air. The market guards were already stirring, alerted by the subtle click of my tools. I didn't have long. Avery didn't hesitate. She rose like a warrior reborn, her movements fluid and commanding. She wasn't a victim, she was a force. We moved through the labyrinth of corridors, shadows masking our escape. Every step echoed with the pounding of my heart, a mix of fear and determination. The black market wasn't forgiving, and our pursuers were ruthless. Outdoors, the desert night embraced us. The cold wind carried the scent of danger, but also a strange kind of hope. Avery's eyes reflected the stars above, and I realized then that she carried entire galaxies within her, a living map of forgotten worlds. She turned to me, voice soft yet unwavering in my mind. "Hunter, you have my life now, and my heart." The weight of those words settled deep within me. I had rescued her from chains, physical and invisible, but the journey ahead promised trials far more treacherous. This was no simple escape. It was a binding of destinies, forged in fire and shadow. We vanished into the night, two souls intertwined by fate, ready to challenge the darkness that sought to claim us both. The desert stretched endlessly beneath the cold moonlight, its silence only broken by the crunch of our footsteps on cracked sand. I glanced at Avery, no longer a prisoner, but a warrior reborn. Her gaze was sharp, searching the horizon for threats unseen, yet beneath that fierce exterior, I sensed a fragile hope flickering like a distant star. Our escape wasn't complete. The black market was a vast web, and though we'd slipped one trap, the hunters still lurked in shadows, waiting to reclaim what they believed was theirs. The world I'd dragged her into was no sanctuary. It was a battlefield painted with betrayal and lost trust. Avery's story spilled slowly between us, whispered in moments when the night was quiet and our breath steady. She was a guardian of an ancient alien clan, her people scattered across galaxies, hunted to near extinction. The black market wasn't just holding her captive, it was hunting the last piece of a legacy, a secret that could tip the balance of power. "How did you end up here?" I asked once, watching her stare at the stars. She hesitated, then spoke, voice heavy with memories. "Betrayal? By those I trusted most. They sold me to survive. Her words sliced through the desert air, a raw confession of pain and loss. I understood betrayal better than most, scars on my soul etched by deceit and broken promises. Yet Avery carried her wounds differently. She bore them like armor, unyielding and fierce. We pressed on toward the settlement where I hoped we'd find allies, people who owed me favors and could keep her safe. But trust was a rare commodity, and every face we encountered was a potential threat or an uncertain friend. Hunter was a name whispered with respect, but I was no hero. The lines I'd crossed in my past blurred the difference between savior and mercenary. Still, for Avery, I vowed to be the shield against a world that wanted to break her again. As we neared the outskirts of the settlement, strange feelings rippled beneath my skin. A mix of anticipation and dread. Avery's pulse quickened beside me, her senses attuned to the invisible dangers that only she could detect. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows, a tall woman clad in sleek armor, eyes gleaming with recognition and something darker. "Hunter," she said, voice low and dangerous. "You shouldn't have brought her here." Avery tensed, but I stood my ground. "She's free, and I intend to keep her that way." The woman smirked, lips curling with a threat unspoken. "You don't know what you're dealing with. That alien carries secrets that could start wars." The words hung heavy between us. Avery's gaze met mine, fierce, determined, but shadowed with doubt. That night, beneath the twin moons, we prepared for a fight far greater than any we'd imagined. Freedom was just the first battle. The war for Avery's future and mine was only beginning. The night air was thick with tension as we took refuge in a hidden bunker beneath the settlement. Flickering holographic maps illuminated the cold walls, casting eerie shadows that danced like ghosts of battles yet to come. Avery sat across from me, her eyes tracing the glowing constellations on the display, as if searching for a sign from the stars. Trust was a fragile thing. I'd learned that the hard way. And now, holding the fate of someone like Avery in my hands, I felt the weight heavier than ever. She was more than a captive or a prize. She was a key, one that could unlock secrets powerful enough to reshape the universe. "How much do you really know about them?" I asked, breaking the silence. "Your people, the ones who betrayed you." Avery's gaze hardened, the light in her eyes flickering with pain and fury. "They're called the Virith. Once guardians of the cosmic balance, now shadows of their former glory, corrupted by greed and ambition." Her words sent a chill through me. The Virith weren't just a distant alien clan. They were a force woven into the fabric of galactic politics, feared and respected. And now, their reach extended into the black market, hunting Avery for reasons I couldn't yet grasp. "They want something you have," I said slowly. "Something worth killing for." She nodded. "A relic. The Star Shard. It's more than a weapon. It's a symbol of hope for my people, and a beacon for those who would see us destroyed." The Star Shard. The name alone carried a weight that pressed against my chest. If the Virith were desperate enough to sell one of their own, it meant the Shard was more than legend. Our uneasy alliance was tested as the night deepened. Every whisper outside the bunker reminded me that danger was never far, and that betrayal lurked not only in distant stars but also within the hearts of those we trusted. Avery's presence unsettled the settlement. Some saw her as a threat, others as a prize. I had to navigate a maze of politics and power plays to keep her safe, a game I was far too familiar with. Then came the betrayal I hadn't expected. It wasn't from the Virith or the black market hunters, but from someone closer. A man who had once been my closest ally. A shadow from my past who had learned to wear masks like armor. "Hunter," the voice echoed in the dim hallway. I turned to see Rylan, a name I hadn't spoken in years. His eyes gleamed with cold calculation. "You really think you can save her?" he sneered. "You're playing a dangerous game, and the stakes are higher than you know." The room tensed. Avery's hand instinctively moved toward the concealed weapon at her side. I stepped between them. "What do you want, Rylan?" His grin was a blade. "To remind you that in this world, trust is the most expensive currency, and you're bankrupt." The warning was clear. The past had come to claim me, threatening to drag Avery down with it. But I wasn't about to let that happen. Not now. Not after everything. That night, as the settlement slept under a fragile veil of peace, I vowed to protect Avery from every shadow, every betrayal. The price of trust was high, but I was willing to pay it if it meant saving her. Because in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't dared to believe in years. Hope. The morning sun was a pale glow behind thick clouds as I awoke to the distant rumble of engines. Avery was already awake, her eyes scanning the horizon like a predator anticipating its prey. I could feel the tension in the air, not just from the approaching threat, but from the weight of everything we had left behind. The star shard was more than a relic. It was a promise of power, peace, or destruction, depending on who controlled it. And now, every faction in the galaxy was moving their pieces, closing in on us. Our refuge had been compromised. The settlement's uneasy calm shattered as armored vehicles rolled in, kicking up dust and fear. The Vireth were sending a message. They hadn't forgotten Avery or what she represented. The black market was no longer just a background threat. It was now an active war zone. We scrambled to prepare, gathering whatever weapons and supplies we could find. Avery's hands moved with practiced precision, her warrior instincts guiding her every move. But beneath her calm exterior, I caught fleeting glimpses of doubt, a silent battle raging within. "Hunter," she said quietly, "I can't run forever." "No one's asking you to," I replied, voice steady despite the chaos. "We fight, and we win." The first wave hit just as the sun breached the clouds, casting sharp shadows over the battlefield. Laser fire sliced through the air, a symphony of violence and desperation. Avery fought with a ferocity that was both breathtaking and terrifying. Every strike was deliberate, every move a dance of survival. I stayed close, watching her fight not just for her life, but for the future of her people, and somehow for both of us. Amidst the chaos, a new figure appeared, a stranger cloaked in darkness, wielding technology that shimmered with alien energy. She moved with uncanny speed, cutting down attackers with ease. Avery recognized her immediately. "Solara!" Avery hissed, a mixture of fear and rage in her voice. "She was my sister!" The revelation hit me hard. The Vireth's betrayal ran deeper than I thought. Family torn apart by war and greed, bound by secrets and shattered loyalties. Solara's eyes locked onto Avery's, and in that moment, time seemed to freeze. Two sisters, once united by blood and trust, now standing on opposite sides of a deadly war. The battle intensified, and I realized this was no longer just about survival. It was about confronting the ghosts of the past, the wounds that refused to heal. As the dust settled, we stood battered but unbroken. Avery's gaze met mine, fierce, determined, and filled with a promise. "This war isn't over," she said, "and neither are we." The aftermath of the battle left the settlement scarred and restless. Silence hung heavy between Avery and me, filled with unspoken questions and shadows of memories neither of us could escape. The presence of Solara, her sister-turned-enemy, cast a long shadow over everything. It was a cruel reminder that some wounds ran deeper than the surface. We found temporary refuge in an underground chamber, its cold walls whispering stories of those who'd hidden there before us. Avery's hands trembled slightly as she traced the faded carvings, ancient symbols of hope and despair intertwined. The weight of her past pressed down on her, yet she remained unbroken. I knew the war wasn't just external. It was a battle within her, a fight to reclaim what was lost and to confront the betrayal that shattered her family. Her people, the Vireth, had once stood as pillars of peace, but now their fractured legacy threatened to consume her. "I never wanted this," Avery confessed one night, voice barely above a whisper. "To be hunted, to lose everything, even my own sister." Her pain was palpable, raw and unfiltered. I reached out, placing my hand over hers, a silent promise that she wasn't alone anymore. "We'll face it together," I said, "no matter what comes." But the path ahead was uncertain. The star shard's power drew enemies from every corner of the galaxy, and the Vireth's internal conflict was just the beginning. Avery revealed the shard's secret. It wasn't merely a weapon, but a living entity, bound by bloodlines and ancient rituals. To protect it meant protecting the very soul of her people. Our journey took us to forgotten temples, where the echoes of her ancestors whispered warnings and guidance. Each step deepened the bond between us, weaving a tapestry of trust, sacrifice, and love. Yet, the closer we got to unlocking the shard's true potential, the more dangerous our enemies became. Solara's relentless pursuit was a constant reminder that family ties could be both a blessing and a curse. One evening, beneath a sky painted with dying stars, Avery shared a vow. "If I fall," she said, eyes fierce and unwavering, "promise me you'll carry this fight, for my people, for us." Her words carved themselves into my soul. I wasn't just her savior anymore. I was her partner, bound by a love forged in fire and shadow. As the universe held its breath, we prepared to face the coming storm. Our hearts intertwined, ready to defy fate and rewrite the stars. The air was thick with tension as we ventured deeper into the ruins of an ancient Vireth stronghold, a place whispered about in legends but avoided by even the most daring. The crumbling stone walls seemed to breathe with memories of glory and despair, each step echoing the footsteps of those who had fallen defending their legacy. Avery moved with a purpose I'd never seen before, a blend of reverence and urgency. She traced the faded glyphs with delicate fingers, her eyes reflecting the flickering light of our torch. The star shard was close, its power pulsing beneath the surface like a heartbeat waiting to be awakened. But as we delved deeper, the fragile alliance we'd built began to fracture. Old wounds and secrets surfaced like ghosts, threatening to unravel everything. "You don't understand," Avery said sharply one night as we camped near the ruins. "The Vireth are not just my people. They are a force bound by laws older than any of us. Their council will never accept outsiders." I clenched my jaw, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "I'm not asking for acceptance. I'm asking for survival." Her gaze pierced me, fierce and unyielding. "Survival comes at a price, and some debts can't be paid with blood alone." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with the weight of unspoken fears. I knew she was right. Trust was a fragile thing, especially between two worlds so different yet so intertwined. Then came the betrayal that shattered our fragile peace. Rylan, my old ally turned enemy, had followed us into the ruins, bringing with him a mercenary force hungry for the star shard's power. His arrival was sudden and brutal, turning our sanctuary into a battlefield. Gunfire echoed through the halls, a cacophony of chaos and desperation. Avery fought with a ferocity that left me breathless, her every move a deadly dance honed by years of survival. But the real shock came when Solara appeared once again, not as an enemy, but as a reluctant ally. "We can't let Rylan win," she said, voice cold but resolute. "For all our faults, the star shard must not fall into the wrong hands." The three of us formed a tenuous truce, united by a common enemy, yet burdened by a history of betrayal. The battle was fierce, pushing us to the edge of endurance. In the chaos, I saw Avery's strength and vulnerability collide. the warrior and the woman intertwined. She fought not just for survival, but for redemption and hope. When the dust settled, we were victorious but scarred. The ruin stood witness to our battle, a testament to the fragile alliances forged in fire. As we regrouped, Avery turned to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. "This isn't over," she said, "but together we might just have a chance." Her words were a beacon in the darkness, a promise that no matter the betrayals or battles ahead, we would face them side by side. The nights around the settlement had turned colder, but the fire inside me blazed stronger than ever, fueled by the fierce, silent bond that was growing between Avery and me. After every battle, every betrayal, and every scar carved into our pasts, it wasn't the noise of war that haunted me, but the quiet moments between us where everything was raw and real. We weren't merely partners in survival anymore. Somewhere between the desperate runs through hostile territories and the stolen breaths beneath the stars, something deeper had taken root, fragile yet undeniable. A bond forged not just by shared danger, but by a mutual understanding that neither of us could walk this path alone. Yet love in our fractured universe was far from simple. It was another battlefield, littered with unseen traps and fragile hopes. Avery carried the weight of her past like a shadow that never left her side. Her eyes, fierce and unyielding in battle, often softened with a wariness that spoke of old wounds and broken trusts. It wasn't easy for her to let anyone close, especially me, no matter how much I wanted to tear down the wall she'd built around her heart. I tried to reach her in every way I could. In small gestures, in silent moments where our hands brushed, in the way I looked at her when the world wasn't watching. But love demanded patience, a language that had to be earned slowly, word by word, touch by touch. One cold night, under a tapestry of distant stars, the barrier between us finally began to crack. We sat by a dying fire, its embers glowing faintly as a chill wind swept across the desert plains. Avery's gaze was fixed on the flickering flames, but when she spoke, her voice was fragile, trembling with a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "Hunter," she whispered, "I'm afraid." I shifted closer, my heart tightening. Afraid of what? That if I let myself feel, if I allow myself to love, she paused, eyes glistening with unshed tears, I'll lose everything all over again. Her confession was like a knife twisting in my chest. I understood all too well the terror of opening your heart when it meant risking everything. I reached out, taking her hand gently in mine. "You won't lose me," I vowed, the conviction in my voice steady and sure. "I'm not going anywhere." For a moment she looked at me, really looked, and I saw the fragile hope flickering behind the fortress of her fears. It was a silent promise, a beginning of something neither of us dared to name aloud yet. But fate, it seemed, was relentless. The following days brought grim news. Emissaries from the Vireth Council had arrived. Their message was simple, ruthless: surrender Avery and the Star Shard, or face total war. The Council had never forgiven her for escaping. To them, Avery was not just a fugitive, but a symbol of rebellion that threatened their crumbling authority. The weight of their ultimatum crushed me. I could see it in Avery's eyes, the fierce light dimmed by exhaustion and hopelessness. I knew then that to save her, to save everything we fought for, I had to make a sacrifice, a desperate gamble born from love and desperation. I offered myself as a hostage. The Council accepted without hesitation. To them, I was just another pawn in their ruthless game. When they bound my wrists and led me away from Avery, her grip on my arm was fierce, almost desperate. "Promise me you'll come back," she demanded, her voice raw and trembling. "I will," I swore, locking my gaze with hers. "No matter what." As the cold steel door shut behind me, I felt the weight of her love and trust settle heavy on my shoulders. I wasn't just fighting for my freedom anymore. I was fighting to return to the woman who had given me a reason to believe in hope again. In the shadows of captivity, I clung to that promise, the flickering flame in the darkness that would guide me home. The cold of the cell bit through my clothes like 1,000 tiny needles, but it couldn't touch the fire burning inside me. Captivity was a test, not a sentence. Every second I spent behind those iron bars only strengthened my resolve to return to Avery, to the promise we'd forged beneath alien stars and through firestorms of betrayal. Days blurred into nights, but my mind was a storm of plans and memories. I thought about her, how her eyes held the galaxies, how her strength was a beacon even in our darkest moments. The star shard was more than a relic. It was a symbol of everything worth fighting for: love, freedom, hope. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The guards, complacent and overconfident, made a mistake. A door left ajar, a distraction in their routine. I seized the chance, slipping into the shadows of the labyrinthine corridors. The cold stone walls echoed with every heartbeat as I moved swiftly, guided by the pulse of our shared destiny. Outside, the settlement was ablaze with chaos. The Virith Council's forces were clashing with rebels and mercenaries, the war spilling into the streets like wildfire. But amidst the turmoil, my only focus was Avery. I found her in the temple courtyard, surrounded yet unyielding, a warrior whose spirit refused to break. Our eyes met across the battlefield, a silent vow passing between us. No matter the cost, no matter the odds, we would face this fight together. With a roar that echoed through the night, I broke through the enemy ranks. Side by side, we carved a path toward freedom, each strike a testament to our unbreakable bond. But victory was never without sacrifice. Solara appeared once more, her face a mask of regret and resolve. "This ends tonight," she said, stepping between us and the last of our enemies. The final confrontation was fierce, sister against sister, past against present. The battle raged like the storm that had brought us here, fierce and unrelenting. When the dust finally settled, Solara lay defeated, but alive, a fragile piece forged in the fires of combat. Exhausted but victorious, Avery and I stood beneath the dawn's first light, the star shard glowing softly between us, a beacon of hope and new beginnings. She reached for my hand, her touch gentle but sure. "You freed me from chains," she whispered, "but you gave me something greater: your heart." In that moment, beneath the endless sky, I knew our journey was only just beginning. Bound by love, forged in fire, and written among the stars, we would face whatever the future held together.